Ivy and Gecko acknowledges the traditional owners of country throughout Australia, and we pay our respects to elders past, present and future. Welcome to Hearts and Minds. Our podcast episodes feature conversations with highly accomplished mining executives and board directors. We'll explore critical themes relating to leadership impact, staff engagement and culture development. So tune in, enjoy the conversations and prepare to be inspired. I'm Alana Bray-White, the Managing Director of Ivy and Gecko, and this is our podcast, Hearts and Minds.
Kindness doesn't mean not being tough. Sometimes being kind is actually just saying, look, I don't know, this is ambiguous, and giving people the tough truth. But, that ability to meet somebody where they are and really understand and listen to who they are, I think is invaluable as a leader.
Our guest today is Sam Retallack. Sam is a highly accomplished senior executive and company director with more than 30 years of experience across aviation, human resources consulting and mining. Most recently, she completed 13 years with ASX-listed IGO, where she retired from the role of Chief People and Sustainability Officer. As part of the executive leadership team, Sam played a pivotal role in IGO's transformation from a base metals miner to a business focused on developing and delivering products critical to clean energy generation and storage. While considering her next career move, Sam remains deeply engaged in the leadership community. She's a member of Chief Executive Women, an organisation that represents Australia's most senior women leaders across the corporate, public service, academic and not-for-profit sectors. She also serves as a Director of Youth Focus, a leading mental health service provider supporting the well-being of young people in Western Australia. As one of mining's most respected executives, Sam brings a wealth of insight on leadership, engagement and culture development. I'm delighted to share her story with you in this episode.
Sam Retallack, thanks for joining us on Hearts and Minds. It's been a while.
It has taken a while, David.
You must be in a really happy place right now. In between executive jobs, a lady of leisure, heading off to Europe in, 2 days?
Yes.
How are you feeling?
I'm feeling very happy. I think I would characterise it as easy and graceful.
That's a nice way of putting it.
Absolutely. Just a little bit excited.
Have you put in a forward order to Italy for the sangria to be there on arrival?
Oh no, I'm a person of great moderation, David. I think I will just take it as the moment comes and see how we go.
Good on you.
In the plaka.
Well, look, thanks so much for making the time to see us. Listeners, I must also introduce my colleague from the Eastern States, David Gallagher.
Thank you. Great to be here and great to meet Sam.
Yeah.
Joining us for the first time on Hearts and Minds, and if I've got anything to do with it, we'll be hosting more of these episodes going forward. Sam, I was thinking on the way here in the car, do you know what I really like about you?
No, David.
When you leave a company, you make sure that you replace yourself with somebody with the same surname and same first name initial, so your tech heads don't need to create a new email address.
No, it will ultimately be seamless. I would
mean,
imagine.
how thoughtful is that?
It's very thoughtful. Not mine. It was, I had nothing to do with that.
But how is your sister settling into her new job?
She's actually not my sister. We are related by marriage. So it's Retallack is my husband's family name, and she is a relative on that side. So I have known, I in fact know her mum and knew her dad probably a bit better than Susie. But it is funny. And I think there were many people that thought that it was a typo when it was actually released.
She's not really going. She's staying.
Well, she's joining.
No, I mean, you're not really.
Oh, no, yes. They were thinking that it was Susie, somebody not Retallack, that the Retallack had not been taken out. So it was
nice.
It was a bit of fun. She will be spectacular. She is such a fantastic professional. I think she will be so good in that
She did
role.
a great job at Newmont.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Well, and she started already?
No, she starts on the 15th of
Okay.
September, I think.
Right.
That was the plan. But I've not actually had very much contact with people at IGO since I left. So I assume that's still the plan. Oh, yeah, it's been lovely. Yeah. I mean, not lovely that I haven't had any contact, but lovely to have a break.
Well, you deserve a break after 13 years there. Sam, as you know, this podcast, we invite board directors and company executives, mainly of the mid-tier gold and critical minerals companies, to join us not so much to talk about the operational aspects of their business or the investment or the financial aspects of funding the growth of their business, but more to talk about their personal experience in leadership and the impact that has on engagement of people and the development of culture. We're HR professionals, we're not technocrats, so that's where we're coming to in terms of this podcast. But before we go there and hopefully get some really interesting insights from you, let's look at your backstory. What can you tell us about your early years?
Well, I was a kid that largely grew up in Wanneroo. So I went to East Wanneroo Primary, and then I went to Wanneroo High School after that for a couple of years. The family moved to Kareen when I was about 14. But in Wanneroo, really that's my first memories as a child. And we lived on 5 acres out Dunderbar Road. And
Market garden country?
All the way around us, yes. And it was, Wanneroo was really quite, it's the distance isn't any different these days, but in those days it felt like quite a long way out. And those days was quite a long time ago.
So this is in the 1970s we're talking?
Perhaps.
Yes. 60s by the sound of it.
No, 70s. It was the 70s.
Late 70s.
It was the late 70s.
Very late 70s.
Yeah.
I remember in those days, Sam, and I'm sure you do as well, that Alan Bond was going to create a fast rail system, a monorail from Perth to
Yanchep.
Yanchep, Two Rocks.
Yes, and there was the big development out there, and there was the what was it, Atlantis?
That's
and
correct.
All of that stuff.
Atlantis Marina,
Yes.
and Wanneroo was going to be a pit stop along the way of this
Absolutely.
20-minute train journey, but
Yes.
alas, it never happened.
It was a pit stop.
Yeah.
And so we were really lucky kids. So I'm one of 3. I'm the eldest of three girls, and so my second sister's 2 years younger than me. So we spent a lot of time. Our house was in the middle of the bush, and then the market gardens were all around us, and so we spent a lot of time in the bush. I remember distinctly seeing snakes and all of those kinds of things, and squealing as a small girl. But we also spend quite a lot of time across the road with a family called the Karatis, who were Italian market gardeners. And their girls were a little bit older than us. And so and a little bit older, probably 5 or 6 years. So that, made quite a difference when we were little. But the mother and the father, Jim and Viola, were beautiful people who were very inclusive of us in their lives. And we spent lots of time at their kitchen table, and she was a fantastic cook, made ravioli from scratch, and beautiful sugo, and I still have this memory, and my husband thinks I'm crazy. Jim used to grow tomatoes, and the tomatoes would all be staked up, obviously, and my sister and I used to kind of play in amongst the rows of tomatoes, and when we were small, they were quite a lot bigger than us. And you can sit down in between tomato bushes, and it's cool, and it's moist, and it's beautiful, and it smells like tomato leaves.
Yes.
Obviously.
And I'm sure tomatoes in those days tasted like tomatoes should.
Oh, I think so, but I don't want to be that old person. But I still can get that same memory if I scrunch the stems of tomatoes on truss tomatoes in the supermarket. And I buy them just because of that, because I can smell the stem, and I just think this is really, all these years later, it's a bit sad.
Yeah.
So that was great. I was a good student. I was a sporty kid. I played tennis and netball and squash and a bunch of different things. I cooked a lot, and Viola taught, and my mum too, taught me to cook. And I think I was a kind of a pretty middling everything. I was a good student, but I wasn't amazing.
What were your favourite subjects?
I loved maths and science.
Okay.
But then I also loved history and geography, and just loved the prospect of an atlas was just like fabulous.
Yeah.
I probably was a bit lippy and annoying, and there were a few girls at Wanneroo High School that apparently through third party conversations wanted to show me how I should be acting on the oval after school. I always wondered why anybody would think that you would turn up to the Oval after school to be beaten up, and I never did.
Right.
But it was a fun childhood. It was outdoors. It was sporty. It was joyous, really.
Apart from your parents and your two sisters and the neighbours, any other people that were highly influential at that point in your life?
So a couple of people. I had a fantastic music teacher, and her name was Val Eaton. And she was really quite into interesting music. And it probably wasn't that interesting at the time. But I will never forget getting into her VW to go somewhere. I mean, in the days when teachers took students places in their own cars, and we got into the car, and on the radio came Bohemian Rhapsody at about force 10. And, I just remember hooning down Wanneroo Road to Bohemian Rhapsody. She was fabulous. She was really great. But I think the one that really, outside of my immediate family, was my grandmother.
Right.
Amazing woman. Began her career at Baird's butter counter, selling butter, and worked her way up through department stores to be a fashion buyer in the Moores department store. Would travel every other week to Melbourne to buy fashion. And was very well known within that industry in Melbourne, and had some quite from a fashion perspective, some friends. But just the way she did all of that through the week, but on the weekend she would come home and she would make like she was a housewife of that time. She would cook, she would make slices and cakes and cook for the week and do all of what. We would rail against that now, but she was literally like a swan, She did everything with crazy legs underneath, or feet, but just an impressive and such a strong businesswoman. I think that to me was really, that's the model that then, I just thought, well, isn't that what people do?
Yeah.
That early life experience reminds me of a much more innocent time, and I think I'm really happy that we were able to live that early life. You've touched on that personal, the early influences. From a career perspective, who was the first person who believed in you? And then how does that carry on in your belief in others today?
If I think back through the people I've worked with, when I started working at the department store, I worked as a casual for a few years and did my degree, and then went back and worked there. And the person who I think must have spied me, I was on their graduate program, and was Robin Ahern. So she was the daughter of the owner of the business, subsequently became the managing director. And she was a really tough marker. But she gave me a couple of opportunities, one of which was to lead the Garden City department store. I was only 28, I think, or 27 or 28, and she was very keen to have a graduate work in stores. Most of the graduates went into buying, but she wanted a graduate to go into stores. And she decided that was going to be me, and she supported me through that. I mean, she was tough. And doing that was like a working MBA, really.
Yes.
There was no high. I remember I went to one meeting, the first meeting I went to, store managers meeting, and I hadn't prepared properly. I hadn't really kind of grasped the concept, and I just never did that again to any meeting ever, because that was a really uncomfortable experience. But it was right, you can't be flippant about those things. That she taught me that discipline and that integrated approach to business, and gave me the opportunity.
Her conscious decision to transition you into operations, was that a great thing as a HR professional in the future to actually understand what actually happens in the business?
It helped me understand. And for many years, I flipped back and forth between HR roles and actually leadership roles, back and forth. But that one in particular, and leading that store, just helped me understand the business. You have to be commercial. You have to understand the business. You cannot just be thinking, we're going to do X, Y, or Z from an HR perspective. It has to be founded in the commerciality of that business, because it makes no sense otherwise. And that was invaluable. It was fabulous.
As a Sydney-sider, you may not have heard of the Ahern's brand. It's a department store. I remember it very fondly, along with Bowen's.
Yes.
I think Ahern's was on the current side of David Jones. I'm talking about the city store.
Yes, well, they ultimately, when they sold the business, they sold it to David Jones.
Did they? Okay.
Yeah. Many of those traditional department stores, family owned, were acquired by the national businesses.
Because Ahern's was Ahern's and there wasn't in the other states, we had a kind of a connection to David Jones, and we quite often went over and looked at their visual merchandising and actually did things, I guess in alliance with them, but not together with them, really.
And there was a guy in the elevator that pushed the buttons for you in a pretty uniform.
You still have one of those at your house now, don't you?
This is still in the early 1970s.
Yeah, and those old lifts. I still go into department stores and think, my gosh, if one of them called me and offered me a job, I'd be there. I'd be there because there's just a dynamic excitement to those. I mean, they're tough now. Bricks and mortar stores are really tough to make money from.
Yeah.
But gosh, it was fun.
It was. Yeah. Sam, before we get into the heavy leadership questions, when you're not concentrating on your work, and aside from going on luxurious European holidays, what do you do to relax at home?
I have lots of leave up my sleeve. I have not been on that many holidays.
So what do you do to relax?
I still love food and I love music. So I still cook. In fact, that's been the lovely thing about having some time off is just cooking. I cooked lunch for a girlfriend last week. I love music. Listen to music. In fact, we listened to 2 albums on the weekend that we haven't listened to for ages while we were pulling the copious numbers of weeds out of our garden. It now looks like Versailles, though, I have to say. I listened to the Ricky Lee Jones album, that original, album that has got Chucky in Love. And then the second album we listened to was Sheryl Crow's Tuesday Night Music Club. And, that jazzy kind of bluesy thing was perfect for that afternoon. But, classical music, opera, a whole range of different things. Even country, Dolly Parton, Shania Twain, there's a little bit of country in me. And I still, obviously I love travel, but sport, that's still the boys have played soccer. We still go watch them. I've done lots more walking since I've been on leave. Just that being out is delightful. So there's lots of things that I can see. There's a thread that carries over from my childhood.
Sam, let's talk leadership. In your experience, nominate 3 personal qualities that you think are most critical for leadership effectiveness. So
I think the first one would be resilience, and I think the ability, and there's a lot made of resilience now. Even saying that word, I kind of almost feel like it's a bit overused.
Define it for us.
Well, it's that ability to stick at something, to recalibrate when you need to, to just, and it's an old-fashioned term, but it's just that to find a way forward. Sometimes that's not the way you imagined it at the beginning, but it's that kind of ability to continue. And I think when you're leading groups of people, they need to see that. They need to see the recalibration. They need to see the flexibility of that. But it's that ability to continue and then really not get knocked over is a really interesting
And when
thing.
you do, recover and bounce back.
And I think some of my career I spent, and it was only a very short amount of time, but, working in a hospital. And when you've sat next to somebody who is dying or is terminal, after that, really nothing is final other than that, really. You can always recalibrate and do something differently.
Yeah.
So I think that sort of level of resilience is really important.
It's interesting to me that you pick that one first, because in the context of you working as an executive within IGO for over a dozen years or so, IGO's in recent years has been very challenged, hasn't it? Partly because of the long, cold winter of lithium prices. It's been a very unfavourable environment for any business that's mining spodumene. or indeed nickel,
Yes.
which IGO was as well. So your leaders, I'm thinking the late Peter Bradford, you knew him far better than I, but I had exposure to Peter. I saw a resilience in that man. I know Ivan to a lesser degree, but IGO, having travelled that journey and significant downturn, resilience must be an absolutely important quality for the people in that business.
Oh, look, absolutely. And I mean, the other big one that you missed for all businesses was COVID.
Yes.
And, you know, that's the ultimate exercise in resilience in terms of how we recovered from that. And that's only 5 years ago. You know, that's not a long time. And admittedly, in this state, we didn't have, you know, the same level of psychosocial effects as some of the other states. But it's just fundamental. You know, I just always think that you just can't drop your bundle. You know, you have got to continue, or you choose not to and not be there. But while you're there and while you've stepped up to the plate, that's something that really is mandatory, I think.
So resilience, what else, Sam?
I think really, and it kind of goes hand in hand, I think you really have to be comfortable with ambiguity. You have to absolutely understand that you couldn't possibly know everything, and that you have to do that, I think, in an authentic way, and that's another overused word, I think, too, but, you know, in a kind of a tangible way so that people understand that. But, you know, in terms of, and I guess IGO is a real example, you know, you could never have guessed, you know, the ambiguity and the change in that business over the last, you could never have guessed that, you know, at the point that we pivoted, or that they pivoted, I still say we, to that clean energy thematic. You know, who'd have thought that, you know, the bottom would fall out of nickel and lithium would be challenged.
And IGO at that time was one of the first mining companies really to make that pivot. I mean, Peter and the board at the time saw, you know, the value and the benefit and the opportunity in going down that path and divesting its gold asset.
And we got we got a lot of shtick for that.
You did.
Because at that point in time, that you know, change to clean energy in the world wasn't really, I mean, and it sounds bizarre to say it now, well understood. You know, people thought that it would pass. I think COVID made a really big difference to that. You know, obviously, all of a sudden the world had really shifted. But I remember, you know, investors and analysts sort of saying to us, why would you do this? Because we were one of the first to really articulate it in a very clear way.
You were. David and I, as career recruiters, are very much aware of our need to, as best we can, assess the ability of a manager or an executive to remain calm and to make good quality decisions under conditions of uncertainty and ambiguity. And being able to pick someone who knows what to do when they don't know what to do is really important. And I think that's a person that has that quality has a competitive edge over the vast majority of candidates in the marketplace. And I always would say, you know, nobody wants to see me losing it. You know, at the point that one of your executives is kind of obviously, you know, really worried about something, everybody worries. You know, they want the reassurance, you know, that they want to know that actually it'll be okay in the end. Because, it will. Yeah. Just picking up on something else you said as well, leaders aren't expected to know everything, you said, and that's the case. So that brings into the conversation qualities of humility and also vulnerability. You know, a good leader, I think, is somebody who can harness the resources and the talents of a team of people, none of whom on an individual basis is capable of solving a problem or taking a company from A to B, but collectively they are. And I think leaders who acknowledge their deficiencies, their limitations, that helps engender and cultivate a trust-based relationship with their peers and with their staff.
Well, you let other people in at that point, don't you? You know, I'm not good at this, but you are, let's work together, is an incredibly powerful thing to do with somebody. You know, it's inclusive, you know, it shows that you trust them. And it's a pleasure. You know, when you work with somebody and you see that come from them, it's a real pleasure to see them thrive.
In those 2 points you've raised, you know, resilience to me, and you've indicated reflection as being really important, ambiguity, and as David just said, that requires vulnerability. I'm wondering what role ego plays.
Oh. Look, I mean, everybody has an ego, obviously, but I think it's really, you really have to have the ability to, understand your own behaviour and you feel it, like, okay, you get to a point in an interaction or a conversation or a negotiation where you think, why do I feel like, you're triggered by something. Why do I feel like this? Is it my ego? Is it that I'm going to, So your ability to kind of dissect that and have the emotional intelligence to understand where your ego sits, I think is something that's really important. If you can't do that, then it's just ego without control.
And in the leadership group at IGO, was that willingness from executive peers to take on board the feedback if ego was getting in the way?
I think so. And I mean, you've got to remember too that group has changed. The people come in and out of that group over the last 3 years. I would say that all people do it better or worse than others. It's such a product of the roles you've done, your childhood, all of the kind of the experiences you carry.
Yeah.
And it is also, a product of what's actually occurring. Sometimes people get overcome by that just because they're so committed to a particular decision.
Yeah.
When I hear about controlled ego in people, I do immediately think of your IGO's current chairman, Mike Nossel, who appeared on this podcast, and I was surprised and delighted in that episode the way he spoke about the acquisition of Western areas, and he described that as, in hindsight, a disastrous decision by the executive and the board. And he said, look, we learned a lot of lessons. Our board members individually and collectively needed to be counselled by external parties to help them improve their analysis of opportunities, investment opportunities. And that struck me as a person, a chairman of a company, that is so confident of himself that he's prepared to expose his vulnerabilities and failures of governance to some degree and learn from them. That really impressed me at the time.
Yeah, well, I think, and hindsight's a fantastic thing. And I too remember that period of time. And I also remember all of the reasons and the justifications for making those decisions, and they were very well grounded at the time. And it's very easy to go back and say, oh, well, yeah, actually, it was, just, as you say, disastrous. But I think, people don't intentionally try and make a mistake. But I think, what's the saying? You win or learn. And I think, if you don't learn from those kinds of things, albeit it was a significant learning, you really don't move forward.
No, you don't.
It's just you're just stuck in,
That's right.
2000 and whatever.
Yeah, people don't learn and people don't succeed unless they make mistakes and they learn from their failings. It's that reflection, as you said, David, and that reflection and gaining insight. And you can only do that when you step back and you pause and you consider things calmly. You can't do it in the rush of the moment. You have to step back, look at what's happened, learn, hopefully, gain the insight and move forward.
I've often had the belief that great leaders make quick decisions, but I think that quick decision is around they've got a compelling risk profile. They often calibrate and think faster than others because they've got the experience or the risk profile to make that decision. They're not going to lose the family farm.
No, and you assess the risk.
Yes.
You can make a quick decision on something that is not, of material value. Other things you would probably take more counsel on. And I think a quick decision belies the vast amount of experience that person has come to that moment with. and the collection of data and information to that point, you don't see.
Yeah, that accumulation of skills, knowledge and judgment comes out in a nanosecond, but it can be a lifetime of...
absolutely.
Yeah.
Before we leave the topic of leadership ego,
Do you have a question for me?
No, I immediately think of narcissism, David.
So I'm turning the conversation back to you.
How many narcissists does it take to change a light bulb?
Don't know.
Only one. He holds the light globe and the world revolves around him.
Yeah.
And I love the fact that that was gender specific to a male.
Now, I think we've got two qualities, if I'm not mistaken:
Correct.
resilience and
Ambiguity.
Ambiguity and uncertainty. Do you have another one, Sam?
Empathy.
Yeah,
And kindness.
So good.
I just think...
Just be nice to people.
Well, look, and I think the thing is, kindness doesn't mean not being tough. Sometimes being kind is actually just saying, look, I don't know. This is ambiguous, and giving people the tough truth. But that ability to meet somebody where they are and really understand and listen to who they are, I think is invaluable as a leader.
Easier said than done, isn't it?
Well,
it is for a lot of people, maybe not for you.
Yeah, I think it depends what you value. If you value human connection and you understand how that actually drives performance, then you do it. It gets caught up with ego too. How do you take yourself out of yourself and listen to what you're saying with such intent that you really understand from a body language point of view, from the subtleties of how people pause in a conversation, what's going on and how they feel.
I think consistency in context is really critical in those things. If you're going to have those conversations, if you are connected to people, that consistency, we do it all the time in the context, why we're having this conversation and what does it relate to. I think when you don't have consistency of context, that's when people feel let down, feel disappointed, or where did that come from?
But I also think you can't turn it on and off.
Yep.
So, you don't turn it on when you're having a tough conversation. It's how you walk the earth.
Yes.
It's a set of data collection that is not just when something's going right or wrong.
It's difficult to earn the trust and respect of people and win their hearts and minds unless you can seemingly, genuinely demonstrate that you care about the well-being of someone. I often think that many senior managers and executives are too busy. They've got too many competing priorities and distractions in their mind to focus on an individual and his or her challenges, aspirations, needs, worries. It's a difficult thing unless you are mature enough and self-confident enough to be able to say, okay, this distraction that's buzzing around in my head right now, I need to quarantine that and focus and give my full attention to this person. I don't think a lot of people are really good at doing that.
No. I think they aren't, because I think, to lead means that you've stepped up to do that with individuals that are part of your team. And I think there are some people who just don't want to have that conversation. They don't want to emotionally go to that place with somebody. That's really hard. It's hard to see people in a distressed state or an angry. I mean, anger is interesting too. So I think, I think what is your job? What is the business that you are conducting? 9 times out of 10, it's actually that person, and understanding that can actually make other things easier.
Yeah.
It is time consuming.
Yeah.
But I think that at the point that you say, come in, let's talk about it, or, let's not talk about it now, let's make some time in 20 minutes' time and let's go and do that, because sometimes that can diffuse the situation a little too.
Yeah.
I think at the point you do that, you actually have to pay full attention. You can't be, on your phone and, all the other distractions that you have.
Here's a provocative question. Is this quality of leadership gender specific? Are women
I don't think so.
better than men at doing this?
No, I've seen people that are excellent in both genders. Maybe there's a tendency for us to think that females are better at it. I think we don't really reward it in males. I think because that traditionally has not been a thing that...
That's an interesting observation.
It's not a male thing. You've got to be, kind of out there leading from the front, telling people what to do, all seeing, all knowing, sort of,
So we attribute the almost maternal instinct to women.
I think we do, yeah.
David, do you have a view on this? The gender specificity of empathy and caring?
No, I think it's a really good point. The masculine and the feminine, and ranting and raving often is the masculine. And I think the consistency is the key. If I had to have a feeling, the great female leaders I've been engaged with are more consistent. They're more engaged, they are more present. The male leaders tend to focus on the problem or the situation. Personal experience. It's not to say that it's not difficult, but I think that consistency is the key. So if you're going to have great leadership across those areas, I think that consistency is really, really important, be that good or bad.
Yeah, and I think a lot of female leaders have had to work really, really overtime to get to the role that they're in. I remember years and years and years ago, and this is another time, another place, a male leader of mine saying, I love hiring women because they work twice as hard to prove that, they can do the job. And, so that effectively what he was saying to me was, we basically get more bang for buck. And I remember thinking, that's dreadful. But it, at that point in time,
there's an element of truth in that.
It was true, yeah. I mean, in those years, it was absolutely true.
Yeah.
But even then, I'd go back to consistency.
Yeah.
I think they're consistently working hard. They're not relying on flashes of brilliance. There's that consistency of effort, this consistency of discretionary effort. Not, I'm going to do this because my boss is going to like it. I'm committed to the cause.
I often think in our industry, David, executive search, recruitment, that if I think of the scores of consultants that I've known and you've known, in my mind, the better ones are female. They tend to be better listeners.
Present company excluded.
They tend to be less aggressive, less.
Well, some.
Yeah. I'm talking very generally here. There's always exceptions, but as a rule, I would lean towards all other things being equal, a female, because of my perception that. And my experience, that they tend to be gentler in the pursuit of business opportunities and more caring about the quality of the process.
Look, I'm not sure. I need a bit of thinking.
It kind of worries me that, I don't know why it sits not well with me. I think I almost feel like that kind of diminishes the kind of equality stance. Yeah. But I don't know. I need to think about. Yeah, need to think about it.
I go back to your early learning around commerciality, and when I'm looking at those types of conversations, as a manager, a business owner, or a leader, there's the commercial impact, and we can be liked by everybody, but if we're not making a contribution to the bottom line, so what? Regardless of gender, So there is that commerciality. That comes into it as well. So I'm not necessarily sure I agree. I don't disagree. I just don't have enough context or information.
And now we take a short break to acknowledge our sponsors. This episode is brought to you by Halo Civil Engineering. Halo is a multidiscipline civil contractor that specialises in the delivery of complex civil projects across defence, infrastructure, energy and resources. A West Australian company committed to delivering dynamic solutions with a focus on zero harm, while having a positive impact on their industry, clients, and the people they serve. For more information, search for Halo Civil Engineering on socials or visit halocivil.com.
Is your business ready to amplify its voice? At Podwave Studios, we offer professional video podcast production services that help you connect with clients, build your brand, and grow your audience. From corporate messaging to thought leadership, we've got you covered. Book your session at podwavestudios.au today.
As the only executive search and leadership consulting firm to be admitted membership of the Minerals Council of Australia, Ivy & Gecko is uniquely resourced to advocate for the interests of our exploration, project development and mining clients.
Sam, I've been a long-time admirer of the unusual way in which IGO communicates its purpose and its values. And I immediately think of a couple of your values, correct me if I'm wrong, are ignite the spark and run through the sprinklers. Now, I don't know any other company, mining industry or other industry, that is as imaginative in its articulation of values as that. Give us the background of that messaging.
So originally, and it was less about messaging, I think. So originally, we didn't really set out for it to be a message per se. So we knew that we had developed a purpose. We had developed that purpose around the clean energy thematic, and that making a difference. I mean, making a difference is everybody's making a difference now. But at the point we did that, it came from our people. We said to them, why do you come to work? What are you doing in this? And in a mining company, that was quite unusual to ask them, well, what are you doing here? And it was very consistent. They all wanted to come and make a difference and do something that was, valuable, to us and to the world. And so once we'd run that for a while, we actually worked out that the values that we had weren't really connected to that making a difference kind of concept and purpose. So we went back to the people and said, well, we don't think these fit anymore for these reasons. What do you really value? What makes us us? Because by that stage we were starting to have a kind of a organisational personality. And so we said to them what makes it, and we did focus groups, and what came from them was, these kinds of kernels of these ideas. And then we thought, well, how do you communicate that in a way that is really, really accessible and relatable and something that actually makes people understand what that is? Yes. And one of the enduring things that, people wanted to, ignite the spark. I mean, it wasn't called Ignite the Spark, but they wanted to, create something for future generations. They wanted to teach people. They wanted to, create something. And the other one was, in answer to this question, is they wanted to have fun. And so there was these two and the others were formed in exactly the same way. But what we did then was we said, what words represent this? And I will never forget, we tested the values with people, another group, and we said, okay, well, what are our current values? And they couldn't tell us. They said, oh, there's teamwork, and I don't know, and then we said, well, look, we think, we've done this work with you. We think we're going to move to these 5 things. What do you think? We went through it all, and then we took them away. We gave them a break. We got them back, and we said, do you remember what those new values were? And almost without exception, they could get 3 or 4 out of 5. Yeah. And we thought, okay, winner.
They're so visual. The association is very meaningful.
And so we thought we're really onto something. Yeah. But absolutely enduringly, and I have been, I won't say criticised, but critiqued for this for many years. The thing that I loved immediately was run through the sprinklers. And I thought, I will die in a ditch to have those words.
I love it.
Because to me was just that absolute, that everybody understands that sort of joie de vivre of doing that. And I remember at the time I was challenged on, well, if we were in other parts of the world, would that translate into other languages? And I thought, well, maybe that doesn't. Maybe that human element does not. And then I looked and I thought, no, you see little kids running through water and doing crazy things, no matter where you are in the world.
It's so relatable. There's a tech company in Silicon Valley. I can't remember it's not Google, but it's one of those. One of the values is it's more fun to be a pirate than join the Navy.
Yes.
Similar sort of thing,
And that's
I
lovely.
think that could be a black hat hacker company.
No, but I get that. There's something nice.
Yeah.
There's something about disruption there and creativity, and then
take a calculated risk and have fun.
I'd see that.
We did some research in our book, Smart Value, 18 months ago now, Sam. We looked at a lot of mid-tier mining companies. We looked at their value statements, their purpose statements, as published on their website. And Alana and I looked at all of these and thought, gee, they all ring the same. They're bland. Frankly, they're a bit boring. And when we surveyed over 350 odd executives in the industry, we asked them what they like to see in terms of values, and they wanted a bold call to action. They wanted an imaginative company. They wanted a culture where they made a difference, not just for themselves, but for the broader community. That link to a broader community purpose was very important for a lot of candidates. And I think a lot of companies forget about that and they don't reflect it in values like IGO clearly does.
To the point, I purposely stayed away from organisations that had a value of having fun. How do you legislate fun? How do you make people want to have fun? But to me, run through the sprinklers, that's something I should aspire to achieve every day, because it's innocent, it's pleasurable, it's something
joyous.
which is achievable. Yeah, it's and back to, for David and I, the early 60s, for you, late 70s, it's part
Maybe
of growing
80s,
up. Yeah. It's part of growing up.
Oh,
Yeah.
it is.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel really, and I think one of the things that's really interesting is I feel really uncomfortable with values that have been created by an executive. I think you can have an idea of where you'd like it to go, but it has to come from the people. Because what you commonly see is we created these values, and now we're embedding them, we're rolling them out in the organisation, and nothing makes me feel more nauseous. But it's interesting because if it comes together, then people do have that kind of inner kernel of what it means. And I think there is a joy to that. Most people want a little bit of levity at work. They want it, they want to make a difference, they want to be serious. But gosh, you spend a lot of time at work.
Yeah. David and I have been recruiting collectively for about 70 years. Doesn't that make us sound old?
Well, I'm enjoying my first decades.
Yeah, right. As search practitioners, our rule of thumb, or I won't speak for David, my rule of thumb has been a long list on the value and relevance of competencies, short list on evidence of relevant achievements of a candidate, and then higher on what you perceive to be the alignment of personal values to what the company stands for. Have we got it right, Sam? Are these useful filters to use in recruitment, or is there a better way?
I would say yes and no, and not that I'm the world's expert on this, but and you have 70 years. I have a mere 25.
That reasons the quality versus quantity.
Yeah, that's true. Look, I think you have to get to a point with capabilities. Of course you do. It's unlikely that you are going to have a brain surgeon working as an accountant. You've got to get to a point where there's something that separates people into categories of capabilities. My one concern with that, though, is what I see is hiring managers being quite, dedicated to that group of things without looking slightly more broadly at that. So that's always a tension for me. Look at, you've got, and it's also a tension for women too. That statistic that, we all look at job ads and job things and if we don't have all of the listed requirements, we won't apply.
Sure.
And,
Yes.
and it's particularly pertinent to me at the moment. I keep thinking, oh gosh, couldn't do that, because I'm missing one thing. But so I think that's, there's value, there's merit to that. The achievements are interesting because that's such a backward look. It's the summation of all the things they've ever done. It does give you some indicator of what could be, but it's only what's been. And so I think that's okay. And it depends what those things were.
That is a very interesting observation. We do look in the rear vision mirror a lot, don't we, David, as recruiters? And maybe it's because we've been coached over so many years and influenced by our clients, some of whom are quite blinkered and say, look, don't show me anybody that does not have 15 years worth of experience at the executive general manager level in a gold mining environment. Very, very specific.
But that's a risk management technique too. It's comforting to know that somebody's, got and I've heard it many times, got the scars from X, Y or Z.
But diversity lives beyond gender and age.
Oh, of course.
And most organisations ignore that diversity aspect when it's
point of
outside
view
of
that
industry.
matters,
Yeah, well,
isn't it? Diversity of point of view.
correct. Yeah, you're valuing that, and then organisations forgotten to share information interviews, to share balance sheets, to share challenges. Therefore, they eliminate opportunities, and they don't ask the question of how will you contribute to our future opportunities, and they reflect back on historic records because they don't want to be vulnerable to share what's not working, what's gone wrong, and we need to move forward.
I agree.
I think you get your best outcomes when it's an open conversation, good, bad, and ugly. What do we need to do moving forward? How does your experience assist us in achieving those goals? So that's when you get the blend, when you have that open dialogue. You look for evidence in the response, but you have to share the challenges or the vulnerability you have.
Yeah, and I take that, and I think that third piece on values. I think there's an element of that, and you can align your values, and the person is probably generally talking to you because they see some merit in
Yes.
how that company is performing and what they hold important. But there's also the watch it there too is, well, you can employ a whole group of very homogeneous people, basically because you're employing on values and they're all the same. So for me, that end of the search or the recruitment process really needs to be, given all of that, how do you imagine this goes? How do you see this role goes? What creatively, what would you do here? Here, and it depends on the questions they're asking too. Here are our challenges, creatively with your experience and the things that you've done. How do you see that going? And that brings into the values, your creativity, all of those things.
Yeah.
So I think you potentially that is the third factor, but it's about how you apply that in a creative sense.
You've given us great insight into organisation culture, values. Much of your professional career about aligning the commercial with the people in the organisation to get that. But how do you look after you?
I'm so terribly bad at this. I will work till I drop. I think that over the years, I have really prioritised the work that I'm doing and the people that I work with over myself. So I don't think I do that very well. I know that has to change because I think as you progress through your career and you get older, the time to go is much less. And I want to be, running and jumping and giggling through this part of my career. So I know that I need to do much better at, I guess just considering my own limits.
So when you're walking through the food bowl of Southern Europe, will you give that conscious thought of who my people are, or how I will practice that when I return?
Yes, I will, and I've already started that process because I think, I think you have to, and I guess the contemplation with director roles or executive roles is how do I take a helicopter view in this? How do I have explore leadership from this new perspective? And I think it just has to be a constant reminder. You have to constantly remind yourself because, unfortunately for me, I just get interested in stuff. And all of a sudden, it's 11 o'clock at night or 12 o'clock at night, and I've been reading the thing that I've been wanting to read.
You're curious and you go down a rabbit hole, don't
Yeah.
you? I mean, doesn't the internet help us do that?
Oh, look, I mean, it's like, it's a class 1 drug for rabbit holes. Yeah.
In terms of some of the broader industry opportunities and challenges, from a people and culture perspective, Sam, what do you think is perhaps the biggest challenge facing the mining industry today?
Look, it's talked about. It's about access to a workforce, the skills and the capabilities we're going to need over the next 10, 15, 20 years. And I think that's made much more difficult by the industry that we are in. I think that I spoke a number of years ago. I had this conversation at IMARC, and I remember being reported on at the time, and it was, I kind of worried me, and I thought, no, why would telling the truth worry me? Like maybe I should, get less sensitive. But, we really over the years, mining has broken our psychological contract with society. You know, we've done things to the environment that people haven't been happy with. We've made people, you know, we've had a real rise and fall. You know, we've recruited lots of people, we made them redundant. Other industries do this, but there's a particular tension around mining. You know, there's that real lack of trust as an industry.
So we have an image problem, a marketing problem?
It's not a marketing problem. It's more endemic. You know, like some of the big companies are starting to address, you know, the psychosocial risks in their businesses and do those things. There are other companies that are not. So, you know, it's not just how we market ourselves. You can't market something that isn't believable. And I think there's some of that that makes it really tough from a workforce perspective. And there's an intergenerational issue because the new generation can see all of that all the time. You know, they can see, they can go online, they can see our environmental reports.
So maybe then the mining industry, the companies in it, need to work much harder and more effectively in terms of revealing the flip side of the coin, which is that, you know, we contribute in such a meaningful way to society's progress and to civilization. I mean, without the extraction of these minerals and the processing of them into products, you know, we don't have much of what we see in this room here.
I think young people intuitively know that. Young people are way smarter than old people think they are. I think, and we are, you know, every generation thinks that theirs was the most connected and everything. But, you know, the group of people in their 20s and 30s and even in their teens are really switched on to this. I don't think we have to show them what the products are. I think we have to prove to them that we can do this in a socially and environmentally responsible way. You know, there is no point in running ESG arguments if you are actually not really concerned with how that goes.
Yeah, so we've got to live our sustainability statements.
We can't speak, I mean, it's disingenuous to speak it without actually believing.
Yeah.
There is and on the East Coast, there is a global miner who isn't present in the West. And they talk exactly to that.
Yes.
You know, from scans to vets to pharmaceuticals and the role that their minerals. But I don't think they address the ESG component of that. So we can see what the contribution to society, but the contribution to society goes beyond the output. It goes to the environment. It goes to a whole range of other factors.
Well, and then the contribution to society is post-product creation, isn't it?
Correct.
Really?
Yeah.
It's how do you actually show people that you are creating that product, whatever it is, you know, nickel con or whatever, in a way that is responsible. Because everybody gets the fact that they like a mobile phone, you know, like, and I've heard older people churlishly say, oh, you know, there are people, you know, dialing their, you know, using their mobile phone to get support for whatever cause they're in. And look, I get, and I think that is, you know, not particularly generous in terms of their observation of how young people work. But, you know, I have no doubt that young people don't want to do this. Because of a whole range of quite, you know, and the other thing is, you know, they also watch global markets. You know, they know that commodity prices go up and down. They can see what's happening in the US.
So we need to provide them with the evidence that will help them become true believers in the mining industry. I mean,
it's a trust issue.
Yeah, it is. And you know, there's obviously been some very high-profile instances that you've referred to, the big miners in particular, the big international ones, who've made really silly mistakes and not being clean and honest enough to quickly admit.
And in some instances, not even silly. Considered and constructed decisions for financial.
I think, you know, most businesses make decisions that they think are considered and constructed, well constructed. It's just, you know, the outcome is judged differently.
Something close to my heart, diversity, fairness, inclusion. We see around the world, I'm thinking particularly in America, where DEI legislation is being wound back. What's your point of view, Sam, on this? And will the anti-woke movement that is so clearly growing in the US and possibly other parts of the world take grip here? I have a big concern that the dilution of DEI practices will be to the detriment of our industry?
Well, firstly, I think that Australia is quite, the Australian psyche is quite different to, the American.
We're smarter. But more to the point, I mean, we are seeing a very autocratic, close to dictatorship type regime evolving over there, where the rule of might is more important than the rule of right. That should concern everybody.
I think I'm an absolute optimist. So I think it actually, it's a real opportunity for Australia. And so I think it's really about, I guess surfing this wave. Australians do not like being told what to do. And the fact that that's occurring there, I think, is an opportunity for us to say, in many ways, we don't want to be like that. We want to be Aussies. But I do think in doing that, we need to reframe the language that we use. And particularly because, and my stance always at IGO was, you can't lose a segment of the population to gain advantage for another. How do we keep people together? How do we help people understand, and particularly, from a DEI perspective, the biggest conversation with that is about gender. And so, how do you not lose males? And who are the majority of people within the mining industry still? I mean, BHP are getting close, and there are, others. IGO is doing well too. But how do you not lose them in the conversation? How do you broaden the conversation and actually be more inclusive and change the language so that it's not? I mean, woke is a word of war in some ways. How do you change that so it's softer and kinder and actually talks to opportunity for all people rather than, diversity, equity, inclusion, because it just has become a weapon. So I think for us, whilst there's, stuff happening in the US and stuff not being a technical term, I think for Australia, from a trade perspective, from a DEI perspective, in many ways, it's a real opportunity if we step up and take the opportunity and don't just watch what we don't want to happen here.
I'm of an age where economically, if America sneezed, the rest of the world caught a cold. I think we are far removed from those influences of America than what we once were from an economic perspective, from a cultural perspective. I think we do have the ability to make a difference. It takes strong leadership, it takes strong self-leadership, it takes strong organisation, it takes strong political leadership. But I think we have that's as an optimist, I think we have the opportunity to do that. Our future is in our control. It's not easy. You have to make the right decisions and take the right steps. But I think we can do some of those.
It takes courage, doesn't it, to be able to push back?
It does, yeah. And I think the phrase DI, it's so holistic, and we tend to get caught up in one aspect. Work from home, return to work. It's a much bigger discussion because it's in the mining industry, you can't work from home in many of the professions which actually happen. So,
but you can be flexible about how you treat people when they need your help. So, you can be working in a process plant at Nova, and there can be something going on in your family that you need assistance with. And you can be flexible about that. So what does flexibility really mean? It's about seeing, once again, it gets back to seeing the individual and what they need and actually then working with that. I think the other point I would make too is that DEI has just become, there's so much corporate speak. And it's exclusionary. As soon as you call it an acronym, or as soon as you put some corporate speak around something, it becomes the realms of corporate individuals and is not relatable to the general population. And we miss an opportunity there too.
And at its best, it's aspirational, and at its worst, it's weaponised.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think people need to be reminded that there's no point having diversity if you don't include people. Inclusion must come first. That is more important. And then
it's the only. If you include people, you will get diversity.
We've had a lot of fun. It's time for rapid fire questions. When you think about people who've shown great leadership in whatever discipline, Sam, who do you think of? Who do you most admire?
So there's lots of sports people, Billie Jean King and those people, so I could name lots of sports people, but they're very prominent. The person who I have followed for lots of years has now passed away, and has always just completely fascinated me is Carla Zampatti.
Well, it makes sense given your grandmother's beginnings and your beginnings.
Tell us more. That's
Carla Zampatti.
Interesting.
So she came to Australia. She was born in Italy in 1942. She came as a child in 1950. Didn't speak English. Started a business, fashion business in the late 60s, early 70s, and just succeeded in what was then really a very male-dominated world. I mean, male-dominated from the point of view of the people that actually run the companies. But the people that were doing the work, obviously the seamstresses and those people were female. But she rose. She had a lovely pared-down Italian style, and was involved with SBS, was a founding member of Chief Executive Women. All sorts of really interesting things. But one of the things that I just loved was she always talked about beautiful clothes or clothes that made you feel good as your armour. And so, you would get dressed and you would do what you needed to do. And that would be the thing that gave you confidence to know you could step out and do what you needed to do. And, that extrinsic protection is just such a lovely thing to give you confidence. And that was her way to lead. And she had children, has obviously a daughter now that's in federal parliament.
That's right.
A son that now runs the business. But just such an interesting combination.
She died a few years ago, didn't she? She fell down some steps at a concert.
A very sad way to go out.
Yeah.
But, one of the interesting things was she always wore heels. And so she was going down some steps that had very high heels on. So, in my mind, fantastic that, to the end, she's
great role model.
Living in the way that she lived.
And what is it about Italian women that are such strong role models for you?
Well, I don't know. Maybe it's where I grew up. She's of interest as a businesswoman, and and as a person that came to Australia from another country. I would be equally as interested in her if she was French or German or whatever. But just that, Australia, for people that came from Europe in the 50s and 60s and 70s, or probably 50s and 60s, was a tough place. They were very much outsiders. They were called names.
Yes.
And yet, she did an amazing job with that business.
Yeah.
Talking of another place and time, Sam, if you were transported in a time machine to live the rest of your life in another time and place, where would you stop the machine?
Can I be me?
Yeah.
Can I be me as now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, really?
Knowing what I know now.
Really?
So I would love, I think I would love to go back and experience the 60s and early 70s that my mum experienced. Because I just, there's a group of women there, and I, my mother-in-law and a group of other women that I know of that age group who were smart and sassy, savvy women who made choices that they would have had more choices to make these days. And I would love to go back to that, knowing what I know, and scramble that up a bit.
Nice.
Yeah.
What about you, David? Where would you press the stop button?
I think I've had a really fortunate life. I've done from the western suburbs of Sydney, to some of the things I've experienced. I've been very, very fortunate. Some of the foolish mistakes I made on the way make some of those opportunities sound, well, how did you ever do that? So I'm not quite sure I would change.
Right. As an idealist, I would stop it in the 1950s, probably in New York. There's something about the 1950s, the fashion, male and female, just the optimism in the air post-war of migrants coming into New York and the rest of America and starting again. It's just very attractive to me.
To that point, we are fortunate to have lived in the most prosperous, continuous, peaceful period in the world's history. And I don't think we should ever forget that.
I know you're a reader, Sam. Tell us a non-fiction book that you found particularly valuable.
So I've loved the Simon Sinek I think he and I are like, he's my brother from another mother, or twins separated at birth, or whatever you want to, however you want to say that. One of the ones I loved though was a book called Turn the Ship Around.
Oh yes, I've read it.
Yeah, and it's just how do you mobilise a group of people in a situation where obviously it's confined. I mean, it was a confined physical
submarine
space.
Yeah.
And that captain was looking for another way, and how do you do that? Or you actually get people involved in the decision-making process. We did it years ago at IGO as one of our business book club books. And it was such a fascinating discussion. So we used to read the book, and then we would meet and have lunch together and talk about the book. But it was just such an interesting book to do because it was quite accessible and tangible. It was written. I mean, it wasn't a literary classic, but the description of how that all went, I think, was really interesting and quite relatable.
It's one of my favourites. And another podcast guest that nominated the same book is Brendan Harris from Sandfire, formerly South 32. Yeah, it's a great book, and
I mean, it's not going to ever win a Pulitzer Prize, but it's a very accessible book in terms of that process and his thinking.
Yeah, and it underlines the importance for that leader of that submarine of inclusion, empowerment, making himself almost redundant as a leader because he'd made everybody else leaders. A great book for listeners. What about you, David? Do you have a favourite non-fiction leadership style book?
Smart Value.
It's on my bedside table too.
Yeah. Well, Sam's written a very flattering.
Well, it's actually interesting. I went back before we had this conversation. I went back to that book and thought, "Gosh, that's right. We did this ages ago."
Final question: what advice would you give your 25-year-old self to help you lead a better quality life?
You're going to think this is a crazy one. I think so. When I had kids, what I watched, and this is a phrase too, I watched them grow up, and they're both, they're men now, but they were boys, and they just had this kind of zealous, crazy bravado, about them, which was just delightful to watch as they grew. But one of the things that one of them was completely obsessed with was Batman, and he wore his Batman costume pretty much 24 hours a day, for months and months and months and months. But the analogy here is that it had a cape. One of the things I've thought about over the years is you have to trust your cape. The things that he thought he could do when he had that costume on and the cape on were miraculous.
Yeah. Wow.
He was a 4-year-old boy, but he was not a 4-year. He was Batman.
Yeah.
Trust your cape. You've got more things in your toolbox than you think you have. I never trusted in my 20s. I wish I had known the capacity and the creativity that I had, and really trusted in that and believed in that. The resilience, the stickability, all were within my cape. They were there. I just didn't let it out.
What a nice analogy, and what a positive way to end a very enjoyable conversation. Sam, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Best wishes to you and Tim in a couple of days when you head off to enjoy the rest of the Northern Hemisphere summer.
Yep.
And good luck in whatever you do next, executive, board director. We follow your career with a great deal of interest. And listeners, if you would like a copy of our much acclaimed book, Smart Value, give me or David Gallagher a phone call. We don't respond to emails. You need to phone us, and we'll happily mail you a complimentary copy.
With a complimentary dinosaur.
See you next time.
Thanks for tuning in to Hearts and Minds. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to leave us a rating or share it with a friend. And don't forget to follow us and connect on social media for updates on all of our upcoming guests. I'm Alana Bray-White, and I look forward to you joining us for our next episode.